Walter Sorrells back with another Knife Makers Friday 5. Today I'm going to be talking about the future of knife making. All right, so I don't want this to sound too grandiose. This is not, I don't have a patent on what's going to happen in the future of knife making. These are really just kind of some random thoughts that I've had recently. A few weeks ago, I did a video about a new laser cutter that I've gotten, and it just kind of got me thinking about what's going on in the knife making world and where things are going to be going. This is a really pretty cool little piece of technology. Check out the video for that. If you're interested, I'll have a link in the cards and description. But there's all kinds of really cool stuff going on in knife making now, and so I just thought I'd kind of put my thoughts out there about it. So before I get started though, every year I do a viewer knife video. It's something I really look forward to. Basically, if you watch the show and have made a knife that you'd like to show off to the world, just shoot me a photograph of it. The better lit, the larger format, the more detailed it is, the better you shoot the picture, the more likely I am to include it in the video. That'll probably come out in January. So anyway, down in the description, there's information about where to send that. So look forward to seeing some of those. Every year, I just see some amazing work. So really looking forward to doing that again this year. Okay, so the handmade or custom-made knife world, whatever you want to call it, is, I don't want to say it's backward looking, but one of the cool things about it is that we're drawing on these historical traditions, forging and so on, that go way back in history. But every year there are new innovations, there are new things that people are doing, and so I want to look forward a little bit and see where maybe some of the trends or some things that are interesting to me are going in this business. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is basically gear, all the equipment that will, help people kind of step up their games in knife making. Most of it is kind of, an outgrowth, I guess you would say, of the world of computers, CNC, all these kinds of things where you are able to design something, you take it out of your head, you design it on a computer, and then you can render that into a living material by any number of ways. So basically, there are two main kind of categories of tools in the CNC, CAD design, kind of world: additive and subtractive machines. So let me talk first about the subtractive machines. Subtractive machining, or subtractive manufacturing, basically just means starting with a block of something and taking some stuff away. So the most obvious example of subtractive machining is CNC. It used to be that great big companies like Ford Motor Company would get these giant, super expensive machining stations, machining centers. You had to have very highly trained, specialized guys programming all this stuff, and it was just out of reach of any normal mortal. That is not the case anymore. I bought this machine right back there, a Tormach, 7 years ago, I think, and it's just a truly amazing machine. Cost me a little bit over 10 grand, I guess, maybe pushing up towards 15 once you include all the tooling and stuff, which is a pretty big chunk of change. But for somebody like me who's in a kind of semi-production, mid-tech world, whatever you want to call that, that was a game changer. I started out as a Japanese sword guy, banging it with a hammer and doing a lot of hand polishing. It was very hand oriented, and I wanted to kind of dip my toe in a more production kind of approach. And initially my idea was, okay, I'll just grind everything out based on standard patterns, and I quickly rejected that, and that was the kind of next step for me. It's astonishing what one of those machines will do. This is not a production machine in the sense that, some $100,000 machining center is. it's not made to be run 24/7. It would probably fall apart if you did that. But for the kind of use that I have for it, where I'm using it intermittently and producing small batches of stuff, it's really remarkable. It allows me to design something and manufacture it to a standard plan, you know, in a very rapid amount of time. And this is really the reason that I found it to be cool, and you know, that I adopted it into what I do. It really allows you to update plans or change a design or tinker with the way that you make something just on a more or less continuous basis. And so that adaptability and flexibility was really, more than anything else, what I was looking for with this machine. I'm obviously not the only guy who thinks that way. So you're seeing more people out there using machines like this now. There are also CNC lathes. You know, those are going to be more kind of specialized as far as knife makers go. Mostly those are going to be attractive to folder makers. And you know, I would say that guys who are using, I mean, Tormach makes one, for instance. I would say that guys who are using those to make folders, you know, have found that the kind of tolerances that they can get on the kind of home type machines may not be quite what they're looking for really high-end folders. But I don't have one, so I can't really speak to that. Yet another category of subtractive manufacturing gizmos are CNC routers. Now, I would say, you know, CNC router is basically the same kind of machine as a mill, but it's made for wood. So you kind of have this gantry system. You set a piece of wood down there, and then this cutter head, just like a router that you know, a hand operated router. It just cuts away a whole bunch of material. Standard knife makers, a router's probably not going to be a go-to machine, but if you're the kind of guy who does, like, you know, a lot of woodworking, if you're into instrument building, you want to make guitars, maybe as a hobby, maybe to make a little money, you want to make gewgaws for, you know, to sell on Etsy, anything like that, the prices of these CNC routers have really come down in recent years, and so you can get something that works pretty efficiently for a couple $1,000s, which, you know, for a lot of people, a couple $1,000s is big money, but, you know, it's in a price range similar to grinders. And so if you have kind of a dual use thing in mind, you could also use it to cut out handle scales and things of that nature, and it can be quite useful to you as a knife maker. Last kind of category of subtractive stuff are cutters. This would include lasers, water jets, plasma cutters, all that sort of thing. Plasma cutters tend to be more of a fabrication-oriented type thing, but laser and water jet cutting machines can be incredibly useful, just really a big production boost for guys who are doing small batch or medium batch, kind of semi-production, mid-tech, whatever you want to call it, type of knives. Now, these machines right now tend to be a bit steep for a dude in a garage, but there are services out there. Basically what you do is you're just sending them an outline, and you cut out that outline, maybe cut the holes that you would normally drill, and it just takes away basically the dopiest, most boring part of the grinding process, where you would normally have just a big old bar of steel that you ground the outline of your knife on. What I think is interesting is that the price, particularly on lasers, seems to be dropping, and it just may well be that in the next few years, sticking a laser in your garage to do the outlining might make as much sense as actually having to pay somebody in Boise to do it for you and ship it to you. I don't think we're quite there yet, but I feel like we're in spitting distance of that right now. Along those lines, and this kind of this technology sort of straddles the fence between additive and subtractive manufacturing. There are also diode lasers, which are much smaller and lower powered machines that are mostly used for cutting out wood, but they can also be used to engrave metals. And again, the power of these has been going up, the prices have been going down. Like I said, I just got hold of one myself, and I'm probably gonna get a couple more and tinker around with them over the coming months. I mean, I was kind of shocked actually at how powerful these little suckers are. They're great for doing logos on knives and stuff like that, but you could also use them to cut out knife handle scales. I've just had mine a month or so, and so I really haven't gotten the full handle on what these things are capable of doing. Really looking forward to that, and I'm sure that a lot of other knife makers are going to find really creative uses for these as these prices are coming down. So now I'm going to turn to additive manufacturing, which is, the opposite. You start with nothing and add a bunch of stuff until you have something. The classic additive manufacturing technique is 3D printing. If you look at the most basic 3D printing, they're using PVC. It's not a super hard material. It's not, the surface finish that you get is just not suitable for sticking on a handle that you're going to be charging a couple $100 for. So 3D printing is really just kind of not quite ready for prime time as far as knife makers are concerned. They're starting to do all kinds of interesting things, putting carbon fiber in, and glass fiber, whatever it might be, different kinds of plastics. So the 3D printing world, the ecosystem's getting more complicated, more capabilities, the prices are coming down. But the most important thing is that the surface finish is just not what you as a custom knife maker who's going to be charging a fair amount of money would want. I feel like all that's got to be in striking distance, but at least I'm not aware that it's quite there yet. But keep an eye on 3D printing. Every year there's more cool stuff coming out, and one of these days, and maybe it's tomorrow, I think knife makers are going to be getting some pretty significant use out of 3D printing. There's also metal 3D printing, a couple different ways of doing this, and basically at this point, I don't see any of them being really useful for the guy in the garage. The prices on these machines are at very industrial levels right now. There are a bunch of different techniques, as I said, and none of them quite ready for prime time, at least as far as Joe average knife maker is concerned. So the final point in the gear realm that maybe is more applicable to guys in the garage who aren't looking to really take the next step towards full production type knife making is just grinders. I mean, in the last few years, there have been a handful of grinder guys, Travis Wirtz, Ameribraid, there's some other ones, Broadbent, I don't know, there are a whole bunch of them right now. But just doing some very innovative stuff with grinders. These guys just keep innovating and turning out really cool things. I mean, just as a for instance, Ameribraid, I think, just released an attachment that's just specifically made for grinding integrals. I saw a prototype of it at Blade Show. Super interesting, super useful if you make that kind of knife. And it seems like every 6 months I'm seeing some really cool little attachment or whatever for grinders, some kind of innovation in that world. So great time to be buying a grinder. You're getting more capability today per dollar spent than you were 25 years ago when I got started. So the last general category of stuff that I want to talk about is materials. I mean, every time I turn on YouTube, I'm seeing some 19-year-old dude doing something with some material I've never even heard of. There's just a lot of really cool stuff out there. Resins and epoxies and all that sort of thing, Alumilite, and there are a whole bunch of different companies that are doing it. Most of these are from applications like molded materials, things for Hollywood, things for model making, things for furniture making. All these different kinds of resins and epoxies are kind of tailored for very specific uses, not knife making, but people are finding really cool uses for them. I did a knife, I don't know, probably 3-4 months ago using this Alumilite casting resin that's clear, and I suspended matches in it so you can see the matches inside the handle. It was just a cool, fun little project, and like I said, every time you turn on YouTube, there's some guy doing some cool thing like that. So I expect to see people just continuing to innovate with materials like that. Of course, while we're talking about materials, can't miss steel. You know, for the last 20 years, every time you turn around, there's some new steel out, and everybody on the interwebs is getting all excited about it. I'm a little bit of a steel skeptic. I feel like most of the time, the average customer can't tell the difference between, you know, one steel and the next. Almost any kind of steel will work for most people who are just cutting string and cardboard. Nevertheless, if you're the kind of guy who's always trying to push the performance horizon and, you know, bring knife making to the absolute apex of performance, more steels are showing up every day, and they all have really cool capabilities. So if that's your jam, you know, keep your eyes peeled. There's always more stuff coming. So just globally, where's all this stuff going? You know, the first thing is the good old-fashioned handmade knife is not going away. 10 years from now, you're still going to be seeing guys who are going over to the anvil, hammering out a knife, grinding it, filing it, whatever, doing a lot of hand sanding, and turning out really beautiful knives. And I don't think that's going to change. Obviously, I didn't talk about Damascus, but people just keep doing really interesting things with Damascus, ever more complicated patterns and approaches, and that's just going to keep happening. But you know, on the, I guess you'd say, kind of semi-production side, I mean, this is really interesting to me. You know, I feel like the gap between, you know, the Spydercos and the Gerbers and Benchmades and so on, and Joe in his garage, that line is kind of blurring, because the capability of machines like this Tormach back there, and just tons of other things, lasers and water jets, just all these crazy machines, all that capability means that you sitting around in your garage have more capacity to design something, to have some crazy design in your head, make it into reality. And as time goes on, like I said, I see that line between the Gerbers and Benchmades and Victorinox and all the, you know, folks who are making production knives in big factories, and the dude in the garage. I think that they're getting closer and closer by the day. And, you know, that's not only exciting for individual knife makers. I just think that's part of maybe what might be, you know, the vanguard of a revival of manufacturing in the United States. We'll see, but I think it's pretty cool. All right, guys, those are just my thoughts. Like I said, if you have any interest in showing off your knife to the world, send me a picture. Down in the description is the information about that. Otherwise, thanks, guys, and keep on making those knives. Thanks for watching, guys. If you like what we're doing here, please subscribe and make sure that you click on that bell so you get notified of all the latest videos. Want to buy a knife from me? Check out my modern blades at tacticsarmory.com. Digging the channel? You can support our video making efforts on Patreon. You know, I've been banging away on these videos for like 10 years, so I hope you'll show some love for all that hard work. Link in the cards and descriptions. Finally, if you're interested in making Japanese swords, check out my full line of Japanese sword videos where I show how to forge Japanese swords as well as how to polish them and how to make fittings, handles, and scabbards. Walter Sorrells Blades.com.